The Spin-off Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Google Gemini. With the Gemini app, you can talk live and have a real-time conversation with an AI assistant. It's great for all kinds of things, like if you want to practice for an upcoming interview, ask for advice on things to do in a new city, or brainstorm creative ideas. And by the way, this script was actually read by Gemini. Download the Gemini app for iOS and Android today. Must be 18 plus to use Gemini Live.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the generative AI assistant that can securely understand your business data, summarize results, and streamline tasks. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
When the Facts Change is brought to you by the Spin-off Podcast Network in partnership with KiwiBank, the bank for Kiwi looking to get ahead in business and in life. A bank that delivers expertise and banking know-how, smart advice for business owners wanting to invest, grow their business or diversify. A bank that adapts with technology through the lens of its people and customers. It is a bank with heart that is driven by its purpose. Kiwi making Kiwi better off. For many people in Aotearoa, 2024 was a year of waiting and hoping and holding on for dear life for the interest rate cut. All year we'd been hoping that inflation would fall enough so the Reserve Bank could cut interest rates, because for so long now, more than 3 years, the prospects of lower interest rates have just kept people going. Our regular contributor to When the Facts Change, Jared Kerr from KiwiBank, described the wait as survive to 2025, because all we needed was lower interest rates to be able to feel better for those people who are borrowing. And of course, the rest of the economy affected. And an economy which is still a housing market with bits tacked on, when interest rates are this high, it feels like there's no air in the room and everyone's just waiting for someone to open the window. And in effect, it eventually happened, but it took a long time. As recently as May the 22nd, the Reserve Bank was saying that inflation was so sticky it wouldn't be able to cut interest rates until well into 2025, the second half of 2025. But then the economy really ran out of steam. It had been bouncing along in and out of recession for about 18 months. But the government's actions in early 2024 of completely stopping new building by Kāinga Ora, by stopping the plans for hospital rebuilds, by stopping the building of new schools, all to save money in the government's view, essentially threw the construction sector and the infrastructure sector into disarray. All through that period as well, we saw Wellington pounded by constant stories of job losses, closing cafes, restaurants falling over, empty shops. The drip, in fact, was more of a flood of bad news coming into the economy from the government, and the long-term effects of those high interest rates really ground the economy into the dirt throughout 2024. And so the moment when finally the Reserve Bank could cut interest rates, eventually it came after the combined weight of high interest rates and the government's fiscal shocks drove the economy into a deeper recession which squeezed all of the inflation pressure out of the economy. So on August the 14th, finally it happened. The Reserve Bank cut the official cash rate by 25 basis points to 5.25%. It was a moment when there was a lot of relief. And really you could hear it in the voice of Reserve Bank Governor Adrian Orr on that day, August the 14th. Have a listen.
I kind of use words like relief and pleased, kind of almost borderline on emotional words, that we are at a position where we are confident that inflation is back within its target band and that we can continue, now commence our renormalisation of policy interest rates. It's darkest before dawn, and I'm suggesting we're basically in dawn at the moment.
August the 14th. Right in the middle of that horrible period of winter and spring. And since then, the Reserve Bank has cut the official cash rate by another 100 basis points down to 4.25%. Mortgage rates have fallen, and there seems to be a bit more activity coming back into the housing market. But it's going to be a struggle. And the reason is the government is trying to squeeze down its share of the economy by stopping spending on investment and infrastructure, by stopping spending growth in health. And the trouble for the government is that by doing that, it's taking impetus and energy out of the economy. It expects that the private sector will be able to step up and push energy back in to offset the withdrawal of the government. The trouble is, to do that, businesses, and actually mostly households, will have to borrow money to be able to pump it into the economy. And that really requires the housing market to get going. And this is one of the risks for this economy, that the recession keeps grinding on right through into 2025. The early indications aren't good. We're going to get the September quarter numbers for GDP towards the end of December after the recording of this podcast. And it looks like that recession, certainly in per capita terms, is going to carry on through into 2025. 2025 will be the year the government hopes, and many in the rest of the economy hope, that the housing sector kicks in, that the open homes are full again, that the auctions are loud and fast, and that the money starts flowing around and around as people increase their debt to offset the government's hopes of reducing its debt. That will be the year of 2025, when the housing market, with bits tacked on, hopefully, from a government point of view, starts to fire up again. The risk, though, is that the Reserve Bank's introduction on June the 1st of debt-to-income multiple controls will reduce the ability of the private sector, and in particular landlords, the ability to gear up and pump money into the economy by buying houses that already exist. That guardrail, deliberately put in by the Reserve Bank to stop another boom in house prices, may actually act as a counterweight to the government's hopes of being able to shift debt from itself, the public sector, to the private sector in the housing market. Just watch out for that in 2025. When the Facts Change was brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network, together with KiwiBank. Visit kiwibank.co.nz to find out how KiwiBank are making Kiwi better off.
Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, podcast manager at The Spin-Off. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spin-Off member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Are you curious about how business can be better? I'm Simon Pound, and I host Business is Boring, a podcast where I kōrero with some of the most interesting people in entrepreneurship, commerce, and making things happen. Tune in to Business is Boring every Tuesday, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with Spark Business Lab.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.